Howdy. We are starting off with Unguess Me, and I am going to guess whether OT is Team Edward or Team Jacob. Count down from three. 3, 2, 1. Edward.
Team Lauren. You've got to represent Kentucky in here.
Is this the Laurent Hyde?
Yeah, this is the Lauren.
All right, well, let's get on with the show. Hey, friends and lovers, welcome back to the For Your Reference podcast. You got your host, Katie.
And OT.
And hide your feminine products and bring along a flea collar because we are sinking our teeth into the Twilight franchise.
Ooh.
Yep, I took it all the way there. 5 films, OT.
5 films.
I don't know if we ever had credentials in film Twitter, but I'm pretty sure it got taken away by calling Twilight films. Come and fight me, bitches. Let's start off with the stats, is what we do around here. The first Twilight film came out in November of 2008. A very cute, more than a Blumhouse, but less than a Powerhouse, $37 million budget.
Uh-huh.
And it brought in $421.6 million.
Whoa.
Yep. That was directed by Catherine Hardwicke. Obviously, these are novels adapted from the 50 Shades of Stephanie Meyer. And adapted the screenplay with Melissa Rosenberg, and she's pretty much a constant throughout all of the films. We move on to New Moon. We have a change in director. There was controversy over that. Chris Wheats was the director. Apparently, Catherine cited scheduling conflicts, but who are we but a lovely podcast that talks about quality films. It was released in November of 2009, so a year later. The budget was $50 million, and it brought in a worldwide gross of $724.3 million. Let's move on to Eclipse. We have another change in director, apparently because Chris felt like he wouldn't be able to do the final cut in that time because he was still working on New Moon as well. We have David Slade. It was released in July of 2010, so there was a bit of a delay on that. The budget is increased a little bit more, $68 million. And it came in just under $700 million gross.
Far out, man.
That's a lot of gross, OT.
It is.
And then we move into the monstrosity of babies of them all, The Breaking Dawn, Part 1 and 2. Part 1 came out in November of 2011. Breaking Dawn 2 came out in November 2012. Breaking Dawn Part 1, the budget was $110 million, and it brought in $712.2 million.
Whoa.
And then in Part 2, we have the budget of $120 million, and that brought in $829.7 million.
At this point, mate, there'll be a Twilight 6 and everyone will just be like, yeah.
I think
5 or 6, however you want to count it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you want to split it, but who. If you haven't watched Twilight, I think that is more shameful than actually watching it, because it is something that, if whether you love it or whether you hate it, the curiosity is too tasty to ignore, OT. So I guess this is the point where we say spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. So yeah, if you want to enjoy the journey of Twilight and not get spoiled, we've got a lovely catalog for you guys. But for those that have watched it, or you just don't fucking care and you want to hear us talk about sparkly vampires and stanky ass werewolves, then join us along the ride.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I guess pretty much for the cast, we have constants of Kirsten Stewart, Robert Pattinson, Billy Burke was noted as one of the first three credited, and then throughout the series, Taylor Lautner gets mentioned in New Moon and Eclipse and moving forward as well. We also have a lovely supporting cast as well as a lovely guest. I feel like the only way I got you to watch this is because your fellow kin is in it as well.
Yeah. There's a Kenyan actor in there, Eddie Gadegi, who plays Lauren.
Yeah.
And he's amazing in the Fast and the Second movie until he's brutally killed off.
Yep.
But we'll always remember Lauren.
So is this an Eddie Gadegi joint?
Yep.
All right. Welcome. This is the first time that you're listening to our podcast. We are going to get into first impressions. I think it's better that we start off with OT first. So I guess just a bit of a peppering. If you heard about Twilight, have you watched the movies before? How does it feel? Does it stand up to time?
So I watched the first Twilight when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And
was it actually? This is an interesting question. Was it big in Kenya?
People were excited about it
Because it was still in the Harry Potter. Like Harry Potter was still a thing. Like it wasn't like it was the only sort of fantastical thing you could watch. I think Lord of the Rings and Hobbit was still around as well.
Yeah, so it made ripples definitely just because of how much people were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Twilight when it came out. I didn't think I followed up with any other sort of Twilight movie after that. Just because I didn't think too much about it.
Yeah.
And I think, vampires, werewolves, or I didn't even know about werewolves at the time. No, like in the movie, you wouldn't know there were werewolves in the past.
Oh, I thought you were saying like the mythology. Like.
Those foreshadowing,
Okay.
but yeah, back then, OT just really didn't care that much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I'd watched a lot of vampire sort of things. And I was like, yeah, I'm content with whatever I have in my life. I don't need this.
Okay, fair enough.
Mm.
It was just there was too much out there and it didn't grab your attention.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Okay, well, I think we're done with first impressions now.
No, come on. We know it's gonna be juicy because the reason I decided to watch the whole sort of series is because of Katie and how much she loves Twilight.
For any of our learned friends and lovers that have any shred of respect for this podcast, and maybe even me, maybe this isn't the episode for you. Okay? All right. So let's move on. I was fucking obsessed with Twilight. I don't know if this is something that we need to get into and take it offline on a couch somewhere. But I have this obsessive gene about me. Like, I get fucking obsessed over shit. We've talked about my BTS K-pop. We've talked about, I don't think we've talked about B2K on here. But I have moments where I get fucking, like, super obsessed with shit. Twilight, the books came out when I was in high school. And I'm going to pull all of my glasses up. But then again, they weren't great books, and it's notoriously...
Still words on pages, mate. It's more than what people do out there.
Do a Google search on how terribly written it was. It even had like mistakes, that were printed to publish. Is that your phrase or mine?
Yeah, that's your phrase or mine.
Printed to publish. I'm going to put that on the shirt. So I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Twilight. If you've listened to, especially in our earlier episodes of our podcast, I did mention that I was raised Mormon. So Stephanie Meyer, I don't know if she still is, but she's Mormon. At the time she was writing the books, she was Mormon. And it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Even looking back, I was having some shell shock moments. I needed to look away from the screen. I had to keep my chastity about me. But yeah, like Twilight was massive and I was still going to church at this time. And Twilight actually got banned from the church. So we were like side dealing our Twilight after school notes.
Oh man, in the streets. That's rough, man.
Oh yeah.
Just standing in the corner, reading your Twilight books, exchanging.
Just getting my fix, right?
The Mormon priest rolling up, taking people in.
Wow. But he better lay low.
Yeah.
So I was obsessed with the books. Even in high school, like we had a little Twilight club. I went to a Twilight convention. I went to a Twilight
So you're
prom.
fully in this.
I was fully into it. And and then I escaped. I also left Twilight. Oh my, tasty institutional ramblings. But yes, I was obsessed with Twilight. But the interesting thing was I didn't fucking care for Bella. And also in the same sense, you know, I was never Team Edward, Team Jacob, because I didn't fucking care about who she ended up with.
Yeah,
I was Team Emmett. I was Team Emmett all the way.
Excuse me, is that the guy who barely has any lines in the movie?
Yeah, like you on this
Less
fucking
than
podcast.
Laurent in the movie?
That is not
just
true.
trying.
That is not true.
All thereabouts.
Well, considering you're the last billing in this podcast, even after our dog, I'm surprised that you would even say something. My love.
Oh, wow. You're coming at Odie for Emmett, eh?
So I had watched Twilight. We even went to midnight screenings and stuff. It was a whole time in my life, but that is not even a chapter. That is a book in my life that will not be reopened, just like the last season of Game of Thrones.
So like all these annoying people when you read comments on movies and stuff where they'll always say, oh my God, the book was so much better. I can't believe this trash. Do you feel the same way? Were the books better than what you saw in the movies?
Thanks, O.T. Rogan. I would love to answer that question. The books were fine. I guess it depends on what you're looking for. If you're just looking for a book, if you just want to escape, I would say Twilight was a very nice one to have. In regards to whether it nourishes your intellectual soul, I wouldn't say so. I would say, though, Bella was really annoying in the book, but I feel like Kristen Stewart made her even more annoying. I feel like Taylor Lautner didn't do very well in it either. Anyway, we'll get to the characters.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Because my sort of first experience of reading a whole series of books before watching the movie was Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. Like I've said it before, many times before.
Like the only book.
It just painted a picture in my mind, and it was so vivid. I don't know, it's just interesting. So if that was your instance, then you know it doesn't really matter or not whether it had mistakes.
So yeah, I really enjoyed the first. Let's just talk about the films in general, and then we'll start to break down themes, and then obviously get to characters. The first Twilight film, I actually really loved it. I feel like it had that really indie sort of vibe. I really enjoyed the way that it just captured it. The color grading was interesting, but it makes sense because it's this cold sort of world. You'll also notice in New Moon, you get some brighter, more orange sort of colors because you're hanging out with Jacob and he's more warm and he's more inviting. So you can see a difference in coloring. It wasn't like accidentally changing the contrast.
Well, that was an interesting thing because I thought Breaking Dawn, is that the last one? It was more vibrant.
It looked like real life, but better.
Yeah.
It was like the Instagram of movies. Yeah. Before I forget about it, not that it's something that I shouldn't forget, but in Breaking Dawn 1, the sex scene, or the sex scenes that they continue to have, but the initial sex scene that they have in Breaking Dawn had to be reshot because Kristen Stewart was thrusting too enthusiastically. And that would have given it an R rating, so they just had to reshoot that.
Oh wow! So there's a level of thrust that you can't go above to get a.
I think
PG-13 until you thrust too hard and then it's R.
I think the reasoning from the director was any sort of movement adds to the excitement. But as we know with Kristen Stewart, she was enthusiastically thrusting even behind the scenes.
They should just call in Starlux and, lay it on me, Starlux.
That's a plebs reference. And I guess if you don't understand that, then perhaps the plebs are yourselves, friends and lovers. But yeah, so I really enjoyed Twilight. Did you enjoy the first movie?
I thought it was all right.
It wasn't the best. It wasn't the most gripping, but I like that it just focused on Edward and Bella. Like you had some other elements. You had, secondary, tertiary sort of characters. You had some like mythology, about the cold ones, but it really was centered on the two.
It's definitely watchable, but what I appreciated it for was they didn't try to cram everything into the first movie. I really appreciated them just taking it slow and establishing the two main characters. Yeah,
More
and
about the werewolves.
even Jacob, you know, even bringing Jacob and his whole sort of clan and tribe thing in, that was interesting for me.
Yeah, and I, this could have turned into us trashing Twilight, but I do have quite a strong bias, and it does lean towards this franchise. But it's too easy, we even tried watching The Last Airbender, and that was actually supposed to be the episode this week. And I said to OT, I'm like, you know what? Like, let's stop our pretension. Let's just watch it for what it is. And man, it was not us. It was the movie.
I think the point where we stopped was they just gone to the Earth Kingdom, and then a group
rebelling.
of 5 men were doing like a 10-second choreographed move, only to throw a rock, only to bend a rock that you could actually lift up with your hand and just throw it at other people. They're like, what the fuck? Shut this shit down.
It was terrible. But Jackson Rathbone is regrettably possibly in The Last Airbender, and he's also in Twilight. So that's how we boomerang back here. So as
Oh, do you mean sucker?
Soka, as regrettable as you might feel, like if you're jerking off to porn and then you leave the screen open and you feel the regret, you still had a good time watching it, or you had an enjoyable, or at least not a painful time, unless that's what you like, if you're nasty. So I did appreciate it, how dare I bring in John Wick, but that's what John Wick did as well. You get us to care about the characters, and then you expand upon your world. And that's what Twilight did. Right? I thought New Moon was good. We got to see more of Jacob. I don't understand the heart-wrenching screams that Bella would have, her night terrors.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would have been illustrated, if you'll pardon the pun, better in the book. But in the movie, it was like, okay, he broke up with you, but why the fuck are you retching in the middle of the night?
6 months after me.
Yeah. And it's like, learn how to be alone, girl. Like, you're just clinging to Jacob as soon as like Edward leaves. It's like, mate, you can have female friends as well.
I'm all alone now. Edward left. Jacob's gone. My dad Charlie's on a case somewhere else. I don't know what to do with myself. Oh, come on now.
Like, learn how the fuck to be alone. Like, we've said this in many episodes. I would never want to be a teenager again, but come on, man. Like there are much more hardships you can go through in your life than for some guy to leave. And, she was always going to run back to him, ever given the chance, right?
Yeah.
So I liked New Moon. I feel like the rest of the films you don't really need to watch.
Oh, you reckon?
Nah, I feel like it gets less interesting. Like, it's cool that we expand the world, but then it just becomes nonsense. Like, all of Breaking Dawn 1, I don't think you need to watch that at all. Unless you care about wanting to see a vampire baby come out. Literally nothing happened. The only thing that happened in Breaking Dawn 1 was at the end when Jacob imprinted.
Oh, yeah.
But let's leave that. Let's leave that as like a later sort of topic. But that's Twilight in a nutshell. Let's go and break down some of the themes that were introduced into this film, and also some elements that we have as well. Because we are a TV film podcast, and even if you don't think the material is great, we will find something meaty to bite into. So let's start off with the lore of... I fucking hate that word. Unless it's like an ancient thing, like don't call it lore if it's like the lyrics to an Imagine Dragons song, okay? I don't know who that was directed at, but I'm sure it was most welcome. Okay. So let's start off. We have vampires and we have werewolves. You are also most welcome to bring in your knowledge, because you said you like watching, what's the one with our Skarsgård? That's vampires, right?
Yeah, True Blood.
Yeah, so feel free to, mention anything about that and how different it is in Twilight, and if you thought it was better or worse.
No, like, our sort of entire movie history, you're told vampires do this. There's there are these rules surrounding vampires. They can't go to the sun because they'll burst in flames.
Yep.
And then all that changes in the Twilight world, where vampires don't really react badly to sunlight. It's just a mere, they'll glow. They'll glow in. They'll start glistening. You know.
It's not that they can't. It's just
it's just that people notice.
Yeah.
Which I found a bit, and not even just, it has to be direct sunlight. Like if it's a cloudy day, it's all right.
Yeah, because unless it was some sort of conspiracy, in school we were told we still needed to wear a hat if it was overcast because the UV rays.
UV is UV at the end of the day.
Yeah, right? So what is it?
I don't know. Anyway, I just found it weird. Other than that, you know, I've always been a fan of sort of this genre, and True Blood got a bit weird at the end, and I think I still need to go back to it and finish it. But there are things like interesting happening. You had Vampire Diaries, and you had
And What We Do in the Shadows.
And What We Do in the Shadows.
Because I said I don't think I've seen like a vampire that isn't skinny. And then you mentioned the guy in What We Do in the Shadows. But I mean like a serious like vampire thing. Because there's this...
Well, there are no chubby vampires in Blade. Maybe not.
Maybe if they were to film it today. But Mahershala is... he's sexual on every level.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
For the sexual?
That and Mahershala's Blade.
Oh, okay. So Mahershala OT over here. Because, you know, vampirism is centered around sexuality. Like in serious sort of things, again, they're always skinny, but they're always very sexual. Like all the ugly ones are the Frankenstein motherfuckers. But whenever you see vampires, they're sleek and they're sexy, they're seductive. And, you know, that's a part of their thing. You know, even in the first Twilight, when they're in the woods with that scene of, tell me, what are you? Who are you? That was Bella, by the way.
You got the sound spot on.
And Edward's like, everything about me draws you in. My smell, my touch, my whatever. Right? So I feel like historically in mythical lore, yikes, what a sentence. Like vampires are seen as very sexy, right? Same as like mermaids. Have you ever seen an unsexy mermaid?
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think like vampires are always very sexy. I think they were sexy translated in a PG Mormon way with Twilight. I still don't think it's been answered about how she was even able to have a baby, and how Edward can and does get boners.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get into the technical bits of it, of how
Literally.
that works.
No, but like when we see the Volturi and they're like destroying other vampires, they look like they're marble inside.
Maybe they're marble sperms that shoot out.
Marble sperms that shoot out. Another merch idea from the For You Reference podcast in 2020. So it's interesting. I guess if you consider the audience that was for Twilight, I think it was enough. No one's really going to dig beneath the surface of, you know, whether this was correct or not. How about that?
Then again, you're in a world of vampires and werewolves. Impregnating someone shouldn't really be your focal point. So,
like there are wild things going on.
There are wilder things going out there.
Yeah, like a baby is nothing.
That's the least of your worries, mate.
Right? So while we're talking about vampires, let's talk about the Cullens. Actually, who was your favorite Cullen? This is what I wanted to ask you while we were watching the movie.
Alice through and through, no doubt. Alice is the favorite.
But who the fuck is Alice?
She is just a genuinely good person through and through.
Oh, totally.
She does everything to the best of her ability, and she's heartwarming, she's kind. There's no malicious bone in her body. And therefore vampire just makes you take the whole sort of concept back, because when you contrast her to that other lady, what was her name? Rosalie. Yeesh. I did not appreciate that.
You're such a dick. We already said spoilers, but there was a moment when you were Trudy Beekmaning Rosalie, and you're like, I'm Rosalie. And then the next scene was her talking about how she got sexually assaulted by her husband to be and her friend, their friends, and she was left to die.
Yeah.
Didn't you feel like a fucking dick?
I did. But,
meh, meh, meh.
yeah, I did. But they took too long to lay that sort of exposition.
It was like Eclipse maybe.
Yeah, they took way too long to do that.
But I think you also need to keep in mind that this is for like younger kids. So like you're not going to say it from the jump in Twilight that, you know, she was sexually assaulted. Yeah. I feel like that is a very common trope. You have someone that's very jaded, and usually it's a woman, and you don't know why they're such a bitch, and then later on you find out that there's more layers to them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and it's not a specific critique for Twilight, but it is a bit annoying. It's like, okay, so they're a bitch, but it's okay now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, so Alice is your favorite.
Hands down.
I think she was great. And the fact that her and Edward were the only other ones that were gifted in the Cullens, I thought that brought an interesting sort of element as well. I think it gave her a bit more say than maybe she would have been given, like a seat at the table.
Well, the Volturi definitely valued her gifts.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love Alice. I've always loved Alice. But then again, I didn't care for Bella. So I didn't, like, it was nice that she was being nice to Bella, but I didn't really care about that. So let's round out the whole Cullen unit. And I'm not even going to start with Emmett. That's how fair I am. Let's start off with Stevie McDreamy, Carlizzle Cullen.
You know what? I think he was really interesting. In fact, I think if Alice was out of the picture, he'd be my top pick.
He's in the daddy.
You can tell he's been through shit.
Oh yes.
For him to assemble a family that stay away from eating human flesh when it's easier, you know, when it's just easier to give out to your cravings and your desires and just run rampant. And the fact that he was also part of the Volturi at the way back when. That would be an interesting story to discover exactly what happened. And this is a spin-off I'm living for, you know? Give me some Cullen love.
You want some love? Come sit on my lap. That's a wire reference.
McNulty, mate.
Yeah, he was really interesting. Just and even the fact that, like you said, he has his own coven, and they are said to be vegetarian. I don't know if that's offensive to vegetarians, but there you go. Topaz are their eyes because they're vegetarians, and then you'll see the ones that consume human blood have the red eyes, and the black eyes are when they're really hungry.
I just have to say this. When we started watching Twilight, you were narrating.
I was.
You were narrating one for one. And I was like, what the fuck is this wrong? What's wrong with you? How long has it been? It's actually, like every night you've been reading Twilight just in secret.
It's actually been years since I've watched the Twilight movies. And obviously I haven't read the books even longer than that. But yeah, I am that motherfucker. And if you've listened to a lot of our podcasts, usually in the first impressions, you'll hear me say, I've never watched this before. It's because OT doesn't want to hear me rehearsing the lines over shit that I've watched before. I do it with Twilight. I do it with 30 Rock. I do it with everything. But yes, but speaking of someone that was very useful and very interesting and had a lot of depth, opposite, Esme.
She didn't fight for shit, did she?
Because we're led to believe that regardless of how they look, they're vampires and they're strong. But Esme just looked like a woman that couldn't protect herself.
Well, the time when they were running or being chased by the werewolves, they were starving. So give us some graces.
I guess. This is not a fight that I care to go in the ring for.
The stupid thing is, though, werewolves can't climb trees. Why not just climb a tree and jump from tree to tree?
Yeah, but those are like CG ultimate big daddy wolves. I'm pretty sure they'll be able to do that.
Nah, man. They made it clear. If you just wanted to get away from the werewolves, either get in the water or go up a tree. It's the classic quiet place scenario.
Yikes.
You know? Go fucking live next to the waterfall, idiots.
I don't even know if they gave a proper reason.
Oh my God. Ridiculous. Yeah.
OT, I feel like you would do well in a horror movie. You'd be like, I'm not down for this shit. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Like you trying to kill me off? No.
I think it was a YouTube sketch we saw, a skit we saw of how black people would react to stuff in horror movies.
Yeah.
And 99% of them will just be like, this scenario looks dodgy, mate.
Yeah,
I'm
like
out.
it will all be over.
That'll be OT in movies.
Yeah, it is OT in movies. Spin-off for the For Your Reference podcast. Since we talked about Alice, let's talk about Jasper.
Mm-hmm.
Jasper's full name was Jasper Hale because he took Rosalie's last name because he wanted people to think they were twins, which is very cute.
Yeah. I think I didn't understand why he looked so constipated at the start. I was like, what's wrong with this guy of yours?
A face we know too well.
But he seemed, he knew his stuff. And the fact they gave us his background, and that was some brutal shit he went through. So, you know, everybody apparently that I hated at the start or I felt that I didn't like them necessarily had a valid reason of being that way.
Yeah. Like there was a backstory. Just like when you watch any sort of talent show, there's always a sob story.
Oh, yeah, because you can't win that money either way. Hey. Your talent is only as good as your backstory.
Exactly. But yeah, Jasper was a very interesting character. We see a very similar dynamic that he had with Maria that Victoria has later on with Riley. In the later films of this franchise. And the fact that Jasper's ability is feeling what other people feel or controlling rather as well. That would not only does he need to train newborns and kill them off because they only last around for a year or that was the strategy. The fact that he felt what they were feeling while he was getting rid of them
That's messed up.
That is some unspoken pain. And it's interesting that he was never mentioned as a recruit for the Volturi too.
Yeah, but in the sort of grand scheme of things, Alice's power would be way more useful than any sort of feelings.
But hang on a second. I think it was when they wanted to throw a party for Bella, Jasper actually manipulated her feelings to be excited for the party. But so that means that he was the only one that was able to use his powers and Bella wasn't immune to him. Right?
Yeah.
So the fact that the Volturi isn't coming for him is stupid, especially because of the training and the background that he had, unless they thought he was broken and he couldn't be fixed. Perhaps. But yeah, Jasper was a very interesting character. He was also a fan fave on the Twilight forums that I frequented.
Oh.
You just love that part of me, don't you?
Yeah, the forums you created, rather.
I was also on Criminal Minds forums too. Were you? Hang on, let's take a break for a second. Were you never on forums at all?
Nah, not really. Not for movies and shit.
Or not the ones that we can talk about?
Not the ones we can talk about, sure.
Okay, well, take from that what you will, or take nothing if you're nasty. Let's talk about the last couple of the Cullens, Emmett and Rosalie, I suppose.
Well, I didn't see why you liked Emmett so much. I don't know. He came across quite dweeby.
Dweeby?
Yeah.
How dare?
Did he not?
He's not Lutz from 30 Rock.
Oh, he might as well be Lutz from 30 Rock. But no, he seems like a good person.
He's just fun.
Yeah.
I liked him because it was fun.
Yeah. Is that all you have to say after years of telling me about Emmett?
I don't know. It's not that deep. I just enjoyed Emmett because he was kind of the comic relief of the book. And when you're dealing with Bella writhing in pain or pleasure or both, it was nice to have scenes with Emmett in it.
Oh, yeah.
That's literally it. Rosalie, we've kind of already talked about as well. She's got a lot of death, but it was nice. It was nice to fall into her world. There are the high school kids, but I don't really care for them too much.
Yeah, that do I.
Let's talk about someone that we really cared for, and every time they popped up on the screen, we were having a good old giggle gaggle good time. Charlie.
Ooh, he is a model father, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He's been plunged in a situation where he can't really say too much about parenting sort of things, I guess.
Yeah.
Because Bella has been living with the mother, I guess, since they were young. But man, I feel sorry for him so much.
He went through a lot.
And the scene where Bella had to get away from the house just to protect him, and she had to say really mean and hurtful things to him. Oh, his face. Oh, I felt so sorry for him.
And like, I think Charlie is that sort of dad that you'll have in a narrative where he doesn't really know what to do, but he's doing his best. But also, as quoted in the first Twilight movie, he doesn't hover. But he does as much as he can. He'll never really say I love you, but he'll do it in other ways. Which was quite clear. An interesting part in the Twilight books, he actually didn't really ask any questions. When Bella was pregnant and she's like, hey, I can't talk to you anymore. But then Billy Burke was like, what the fuck? That doesn't make sense. So they actually had to change it. I don't know why Stephanie Meyer thought a parent wouldn't care that the daughter is suddenly a vampire and has a fucking baby.
Just assume it's a Mormon thing.
It probably is a
Papa, thing. I'm leaving. I'm not coming back.
I'm leaving the prairie.
But he let a lot of things slide, and he put a lot of trust in Bella, though. You know, you gotta trust your kids to know that what they're doing is right for them.
Yeah, and as people that, well, at least myself, we think OT has quite a few kids. But for myself that doesn't have kids, like, you should teach them how to discern what's right in the world as opposed to telling them what is right.
Yeah, and let them fail if they have to.
A lot. Let them fail a lot. But yeah, to be a father to a teenage girl that's screaming night terrors every night, I don't know how he even handle that, to be honest.
Yeah. I'd probably just leave the house.
Yeah. Oh, and how nice was it seeing him at the wedding? And he's like, yeah, I know, I look hot. He was like the daddy swan of all. But Charlie was great. I really enjoyed seeing Charlie through the series. Whenever we could see him, he was always nice and fun. And it was great to bring him into there. But let's focus a little bit more on the werewolves while we're here. Oh, actually... Okay, so we've talked about the Cullens. Let's broaden out. I guess more before the Volturi get introduced, we do have the opposition of 3 vampires through way of James, Victoria, and also Laurent. Is the T silent? Laurent?
Yeah, it's Laurent.
Is that French or Swahili?
Swench.
You're a swench. So let's talk a bit about these 3. Did you know that he was in this movie before you watched it, or was he part of the reason why you wanted to watch it?
No, it was a surprise.
Oh, nice.
It was a surprise because I had seen him in previous things before, and
House?
I love Gudegi. I think he's really a great actor. So seeing him in this just added to me wanting to follow through on the series. I think he died a bit too quickly, but then again, he did pop up here and there throughout.
He lasted longer than James, and he gets more screen time, like you say, than other people.
Yeah, I liked Victoria. I liked the original Victoria. I think her name
Rochelle.
Yeah, Rochelle. Bryce Dallas Howard, I don't know. I just can't take to her. I really can't.
While we are very much an indie podcast and away from the glitz and glamour of Tinseltown, I will say it felt weird that they changed Victoria even back when this movie came out, and to know that Bryce Dallas Howard's dad is Ron Howard, it feels icky to me. It feels a bit much.
Yeah, say what you will, but that's Hollywood, I guess. I just didn't appreciate it.
It's like, you think you're going to change a redheaded lady and we won't notice?
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, oh, who's this?
But yeah, it was interesting having a new sort of element. I do think the whole Victoria storyline kind of lasted a bit too long.
Yeah.
Like, she could have been killed off in New Moon, to be honest.
It lasted way longer than
because
I
you have
thought
the Volturi, and they're interesting enough as an opposition.
But they were like being Thanos into the story. Like you had about them, and then they don't appear until right at the end.
I think that storyline lasts too long. I get that it was to draw a parallel between what Jasper went through as a 2IC in the army, the Confederate army. But a cute fact: Jackson Rathbone is a Texan, and he was fighting for his character Jasper to wear cowboy boots because he was adamant that if he was really a Texan, he would be wearing cowboy boots. So, as much as you scorn him for Soka, remember that he's a cowboy boots wearing, diddly doodling vampire. Yeah. But again, the story isn't great throughout all of Twilight.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, there's enough interesting detail to hold your attention. And if nothing for the nostalgia, it was definitely a place that I was most welcome. All right. I think I've done enough dancing away from the main, the main ingredient of Twilight. There is that phrase, a better story than Twilight, which I think I mentioned in our Black Panther episode or very early on. And you were very, how do you do, fellow kids? Because you didn't understand my reference. I think that's way too many references for my mouth and your ears, friends and lovers, but there you go. Let's talk about Edward and Bella. You want to talk about them individually or you want to talk about them as a couple?
Let's talk
or
about
do you want to talk about them and Jacob? We might as well talk about all three of them.
Oh, yeah. Let's do the threesome.
Can we choose someone else? Like if we're going to have a threesome, can we choose someone else? Okay. I don't think Bella was interesting. I really don't think Bella was interesting. And, I do appreciate the majesty and the whimsical wonder of writing a book, because if you're a plain person, then you can make the most strapping and most mythical of beasts fall in love with you. And that's what I felt watching this. Not only was she, and not that she had to be, she wasn't devastatingly good looking. Even in the books, she was just so, right? But she didn't offer anything in way of interest, in way of conversation, in way of being, right? So to have everyone literally fawn over her when she first gets to the school in the first Twilight movie, it is a bit incredulous to me. But also at the same time, I was that demographic at that time, but I also thought it was ridiculous. So... Bella as a character was very much a placeholder for me. She was my entryway into a world of fantasy. So it was hard, but I kind of ignored her and was waiting for other more interesting things to happen.
Well, I found it hard ignoring her because, first of all, I didn't understand the moans. Like, every sort of what she said, it was like she was moaning. I just can't. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, dear Lord, he was insistent.
Oh, I kind of like that. Can that be our intro?
Oh, my God. It was like puzzle tongue for moans, mate.
Nice.
Yeah.
Look at you.
But aside from that, I think I understand vaguely, or not vaguely, I understand why Edward to some degree was so obsessed with her. And this was more geared towards, I can't read you. This creates an interest.
If he could read her, would he be interested?
Nah, mate. This is just another normal chick in the class.
Right? I think that was the biggest appeal.
Too. Yeah, I think so too.
And there was a comment made, I think maybe it was in Breaking Dawn when they were doing training. Edward was saying that he's met Shields before, which is what her ability is, but he didn't realize that would be her. So if he's met Shields before, and it's never happened before that he can't read someone, how does that even make sense? Or am I not supposed to be poking holes because it's all falling apart anyway?
I don't know. Maybe not all shields can protect themselves from not being read.
Maybe. But then that poses the question of, do humans also have an ability before they become a vampire?
Yes.
That poses a more interesting sort of world, because even before becoming a vampire, you've already got some incredible abilities.
I'd say yes, because our Jacob said the reason I was so connected to you wasn't because of you, mate. It was because of the baby that you'd have.
I was waiting
even before you were preggers. So bloody! Oh my God! I was
waiting to bring that up on its own. OT. That is too much to bring up in this section.
But we were talking about humans having abilities.
Correct.
So in some intrinsic way, I'd say yes. There's some magical elements to it.
But she wasn't even a vampire and she had the shield ability. So that means there are dormant or at least unconscious abilities that humans might have that become super exemplified when you become, or if you were to become supernatural through way of vampire. See how much more interesting that would be? But let's just focus on me screaming in the middle of the night or jumping off a cliff.
Yeah, I didn't like that attention sort of grabbing behavior or trying to just get...
But it was very on brand with Bella.
It was on brand. I didn't
like, I want to do dangerous things just so I can make him come back to me.
Yeah, but you know what? Out of all the sort of shows and movies I've watched when dealing with sort of this kind of feelings and, I can't live without you anymore.
I can't live.
I don't think I've seen one that's
I can't live anymore.
I don't think I've seen one that's more creepier than Roswell in Jason and Shiri. It made me and my sister really creepy, and we're like, oh my God, this is weird.
That's because you kept watching sexual shit with your family.
Roswell isn't even that sexual, but the way Shiri and Jason and their whole chemistry and how they looked at each other, it was like they're undressing. I don't know. You just have to watch Roswell to understand the level of yeesh.
What did you think of Edward? Because you were really championing Edward as a character.
Because he's solid. It's understandable that Jacob came off as a brat at times because Edward has lived. Yes, he's 17, but he's been 17 for 100 plus years.
Yeah.
So he's got some maturity.
Yeah.
I just appreciated that. Like, he didn't hold himself too fucking seriously. And he was like, you know, at the end of the day, I just want her to be happy. Whether or not it's with me or not, then let that be.
How funny would it be if he's been doing the same thing, like living out his life with a girl until she dies and then doing it all over again. And then Bella comes along and she's like, I want to be with you forever.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do high school every other time, man. That's not a life.
Like, what kind? Yeah, wouldn't you just go, if not Volturi, wouldn't you just go full nomad? You would be Laurent.
Yes, I would. Laurent?
Switch?
Swench.
Oh, switch. You need to stop yourself, sir. But I guess Edward was interesting. It was interesting how they said that he was very traditional. But what kind of traditional man sleeps and hovers over a sleeping person? That's
the OG traditional right there.
Yikes.
Where do you think that shit came from?
Mega yikes.
Voyeurism has been there since the age of time, mate.
The OG, the OT, the OG OT.
Yeah, that shit's in the scriptures, mate. So he's just keeping to the norm. That's OG tradition right there.
I think it was made very clear that it was always going to be Edward and Bella. But there were moments for, people that love Jacob and that shipped Team Jacob to have, even before the whole Renesmee thing. I do want to defend Jacob in a sense, not the later Jacob, just the earlier Jacob before the whole imprinting shit. Jacob was very, very likable in the books. He was very much like Bella described. He was the son, and he had a lot of love to give, and he had a lot of warmth. I feel like the problems that we had in the movie was Taylor Lautner. Again, we're still an indie podcast, but I feel like, sometimes when you hear like little kids singing and they sound good, but they don't know what they're singing about. Like they'll be singing "How Deep Is Your Love for Me" by Drew Hill, and they don't even know what love is. That's kind of how I felt about Taylor Lautner. Like, you're trying to exude some emotions that perhaps you don't have the life experience to be able to exude. Like Robert Pattinson playing an old man is pretty on brand. That's very on brand for him. Even limited sort of fighting scenes we saw with Robert Pattinson were very terrible. So I guess we'll see how Batman goes. But he was very on brand with being an old man. Kristen Stewart was very on brand with being the moan talkie, screaming in your sleep sort of lady.
Muscle moan, we said.
Parcelman, thank you. Again, we keep bringing all these merch ideas. We need to deliver, OT. And I feel like Taylor Lautner he just didn't do well with the Jacob character. I think, even later on in the series, we meet Seth. And Seth is everything that Jacob was in the book. Or on another sense, even though he was younger in the books, I think, Jacob might have benefited from being played by an older actor, because when you put Taylor Lautner next to Robert Pattinson, even though he beefed up, he was still younger and naive looking, right? So I think if they had brought someone in that, had a bit of, even old soul, I guess people like to say, in my Twilight forums, of course,
there are suggestions.
Yeah, of course. Like dream
and
casting.
don't even say Colin Firth, because no way he plays a 17-year-old.
Colin Firth can play Bella. Colin Firth can play Edward. Colin Firth can play my ass.
All right.
Okay. No, I would say Stephen Strait. Stephen Strait at the time of casting would have been perfect age.
Expanse guy.
So yes, for those of you that have watched The Expanse, that is the same Stephen Strait. However, accolades need to be given to the film The Covenant.
All right.
And I will get you to watch that eventually. I don't think there's a Kenyan in the movie, so it will take me a while.
Oh, there's a big backlog then.
So Bella, Edward, and Jacob. We already said spoilers, and we've kind of mentioned it a few times already. But let's talk about it. If we're talking about Jacob, we need to finish off his story in that we have mythology, we have some traditions being shared about Quileutes and how they imprint. And that is essentially their sort of process of finding their companion. And Jacob imprints on a baby.
Man, at first, when Breaking Dawn Part 1 ended, he said it wasn't like that. I was like, cool, show me how it is. And then in Part 2, they're like, oh, yeah, then.
Because even you said it when Renesmee was like giving him the flashback sort of memories, you were like, did he imprint on the baby? But I don't think you realized what you said. And I was just sitting there like, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch this. I think I said it in First Impressions, but I had only watched the first Twilight movie and I refused to watch Breaking Dawn because I was so fucking angry at the book. And I'm like, I don't want to see it. So it was interesting to actually watch it now. And it was creepy. Obviously, they could have done much more creepy to it. So they were very pared back in how they did it. It wasn't as Weinstein-y as Basic Instinct, but man.
So let me ask you this though: imprinting would make you feel like you like someone else or whatever because it's all genetic and whatnot.
Imprinting is essentially the tethering without the sexy tentacles.
Yeah. So the fact that she's not a wolf, would that still work?
But that's exactly what I'm asking as well, because she's not from the reservation. And I don't think it's ever happened in history that someone has imprinted on someone that isn't from their community.
All right. That was just weird, and I think I just don't want to talk about it.
It's not a Mormon thing, I'll tell you that. I'll defend Mormonism that far. Because what I don't understand is, if I'm trying to understand, I would say perhaps maybe this was devised for people that loved Jacob and wanted him to have some sort of resolution. Yeah, literally, but most disgustingly, a piece of Bella. And I'm like, but who with a normal brain would think that? Like, how would you even write that? Why can't Taylor just imprint on Leah? I keep saying Taylor. Well, to be fair, has he had more success past this?
Yeah.
He tried to do the whole Matt Damon sort of franchise and got too big for his britches.
Well, and the fact that we found out that she'll be
in 7 years she'll be fully grown.
It's like Rising of the Shield hero sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's an anime reference. That whole imprinting thing was a fucking tragedy. Quill was my favorite of the werewolves. Quill was also very much to be compared to with Emmett. So it pissed me off every time I see that actor. Yes, I could have looked your name up, but I didn't. It hurts. He's literally described as being tall and burly and muscular. So, come on. Are you telling me there weren't any other actors at the time that couldn't have been casted as Quill?
Maybe not.
But Quill also imprints on a younger child as well.
Okay.
So it's not
in
like...
the books?
Yeah. So it's not like Jacob just imprints on the baby. Like, there's more imprinting on children.
So maybe it's a thing.
Yikes. That is some complexity. That is some Green Book complexity that we are not getting into today. I think the point is, if it's not your story, don't fucking tell it, or at least don't make it so problematic like this, because that's an issue. Is it on level of Jack Black playing a panda? Perhaps.
What?
I will die on this Kung Fu Panda hill. How dare you? Is there anything else you wanted to say about the werewolves? Maybe we can talk about Sam and Emily.
Yeah, man, that relationship of theirs, eh? Because
Sam was with Leah, and then he imprinted on Emily.
Well, if they get angry, they can't really control, and they just rage out and transform. And if your wife is close, then you pretty much take off their whole head. And in this case, Sam pretty much scratched off half the face of the wife. That was, I don't know, man. This is some weird shit. Right?
It's like it's on surface. Don't think too deeply. Don't dig beneath it, because there are some issues with this. There are definitely some issues. What did you think about Leah? Leah eventually becoming a werewolf, and Leah actually being with Sam, but Sam imprinted with Emily. Also, I want to mention as a fact, remember how Harry Clearwater had a heart attack? It wasn't based on Victoria. It was actually based on the fact that he saw Leah turn into a werewolf, because up until then, it was only recorded that men could be werewolves.
Oh,
so that's what triggered his heart attack, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it must have been hard for Leah to have someone that she loved and loved her back. And because of tradition, because of the imprinting, she couldn't be with Sam anymore. Not only that, she was also in the pack. And with the werewolves, they all share thoughts as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was right for her to leave the pack. And once you leave the pack, then you can't hear their thoughts, which is a plus. I felt, just while you're still talking about the werewolves, I felt Jacob was really spoiled, even as a pack of the, as a member of the pack, because he was entitled as hell.
Oh yes,
I am a son of a chief. I did not take orders.
Yeah. And how's about he goes and tells the werewolves about the baby being born, and they're like, we need to kill her, and he's like, no, you can't. And then he goes and tells the colors and gives them a heads up.
There's a problem. They know. Yeah, they know because you told them, Dick. What the fuck?
He was like the bold man in Game of Thrones.
Varys, you mean?
Yeah, obviously not as crafty and not as well accomplished as Varys. But the way that he would just go back and forth and just tell, he literally caused everything. And he was very incel-y as well.
Oh yeah, that's the norm, mate.
Like he felt entitled to Bella just because.
I know you love me. I will not let it go.
I'm gonna kiss you on your mouth. It was weird. It was weird. Again, I guess this is the franchise, and just don't dig beneath it. Just take it for what it is, because anything more is definitely a fucking problem. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about the Volturi. I thought that was quite an interesting sort of element. Do you think, do you theorize that perhaps there are, parallels to be drawn with Volturi and the Vatican?
Oh yeah, it's in Italy as well. So
yeah, and they're like OG organization.
Yeah. There's definitely heavy Catholic vibes going on there. It does feel like the Vatican. And I think once we do get a backstory of Papa Cullen, which I think will come soon enough, then we can delve into the Volturi world, which would be amazing. Because we get these 3 grandpapa vampires who we know are super strong, but we don't really know anything about them. I don't think we know what the powers of the other two are, apart from Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen.
Yeah, Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen.
I think Martin Sheen is Charlie Sheen's dad, is it not? And Emilio Estevez.
Yeah. Gotta love the Sheens.
Suppose.
But yeah, that would be really interesting because I feel like they had such a strong background there that I'd want a world that.
And it's like, why are we still looking at Edward and Bella? There's so much more interesting things. Just move them out of the way.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, the Volturi definitely introduce a new sort of element to it. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any plans for Papa Cullen. Papa OT. Midnight Sun is due to come out this year, which is Twilight from Edward's perspective.
No one needs that.
But you know what? Also, after letting this franchise settle for a bit and watching it again, Edward is so fucking miserable. Everything is an internal conflict for him, right? He doesn't want Bella to be a vampire. But then she stumbles across all of these problems because she's not a vampire. You know, he doesn't want to have sex with her. The most fun thing you could ever do as a vampire is have vampire sex with a human, I would say. Right?
That's a Katie book right there.
Well, they talked about Emmett and Rosalie, you know, fucking for a whole decade. They couldn't, like, the rest of the Cullens couldn't even go near them because their fucking was so ferocious, right? But every single step of the way in the relationship with Bella was so painful. Like, Edward always had something to complain about, to and ah about, and you know, Bella wasn't the best person to be around, so maybe that's why. But he always had a qualm. He has more qualms than the For Your Reference household, and it was a lot. It was very, like, life isn't that complicated, bro. You've been around for over 100 years. And all of your angst is coming from a teenager after 100 years of living through the Spanish influenza?
Yeah.
Come on, dude. Lighten up.
Yeah.
Enjoy your boner or two.
I reckon the minute he found out that Bella was preggers, they should have just turned her right there and then.
Yeah.
Save yourself all
this agony. And then it was
agony.
too late, and then he kept biting her, and it's like, mate, you should have done it already.
Oh dear. Yeah, he was just the master of his own sort of misery.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you feel about seeing Michael Sheen as Aro?
Oh, love Michael Sheen.
You don't think he was just playing Wesley Snipes from 30 Rock?
He always plays he's always Wesley Snipes to me in everything. even in the Good Fight, he's just Wesley Snipes.
He's in the Good Fight.
Yeah.
Oh, I joined the Good Fight very late.
Yeah, you need to start it from season 1, mate.
I do. I definitely do. And he's also in The Prodigal Son as well. We are a Michael Sheen fan club podcast. We also have Jamie Campbell-Bower. This is your time to apologize if you want OT, because you mentioned that he ruined Camelot.
Nah, not apologizing. He did ruin Camelot.
Wow.
I stand by that. He was not ready for that role.
But even the guy, even in the show Merlin, the guy that played Arthur wasn't that good either.
What?
Okay.
Have you watched Marlon?
Friends and Lovers.
The cast is amazing in Marlon. Every single one of them is, like you like to see it, 100 chef's kisses.
I've run out of limbs. I feel like I can't say anything bad about Merlin. Is that?
No, you can't. There's a line. Okay. There's a line.
Is that our next show we're going to watch?
Oh, we need to rewatch Marlon.
But doesn't it have like hundreds of episodes?
No, it has only 5 seasons. It's a British show. It doesn't have 20 episodes a season.
Can we watch Xena instead?
If you say so.
But the Volturi are very interesting. Is there anything you want to say about Dakota Fanning?
Oh, at first when I saw her, when she got introduced to the scene, I was like, oh, is this a young Sophie Turner? I was like, I didn't know Sophie Turner was in this. Yeah.
There are some people that you wonder whether they existed before you saw them, right?
Yeah.
Or did she just come into fruition in Game of Thrones?
How did you find her acting, though? I think she was a bit, for Dakota, though. I feel like I've seen stronger performances from her.
I don't think it's fair because she, even in the last movie, the only word she had was pain. That's it. She didn't even get to talk. So to pin her whole career on
not
Jane,
career. Just I felt like I'd get more out of her,
but
even if she didn't have a lot of words.
In saying that, I feel like Colin Firth would have played a very good Jane.
And just to say, like, Kadegi barely had any words, but his presence, mate, you felt it. That's acting. Boom.
By you?
Yeah.
I'm not always, there are actors and actresses that you always check for. I'm not really checking for Dakota Fanning, but whenever she turns up in things, it's always most welcome.
Oh yeah, Dakota is strong. She's amazing.
Rami Malek. Let's just quickly go through some of the guest stars. Rami Malek.
Yeah, I really didn't care for how that sort of arc and how it all went. Like,
it all felt rushed.
It did feel rushed. It did feel like, one of the things that in our sort of creative writing in elementary school, we had this teacher who said, if you ever write to me that you fucking dreamt something at the end of any sort of story,
it was all a dream,
I would bloody kill you. So we grew up making sure we cannot say that this was a dream at the end of it.
It's lazy.
It's just lazy. I wanted there to be effects of everything that people have done. I wanted, it was sad to see Papa Cullen being killed off. Mm-hmm. It was sad to see Jasper dying. But that's fucking life. Yep. Not everyone can get a bloody happy ending. But for Bella, Edward to survive and to be happy, a lot had to be sacrificed. And I felt like that was just so much. I don't know. I just wish they used Alice better than this cheap sort of tool to just show Arrow, you will fucking die miserably. So toe line or bloody get on with it. And
it has been a long time since I've read the books, and I try to look it up as well. I think that actually happened in the book as well.
Of course it did.
I don't think they just did it for the movie.
Not everything is a happy ending. Not everyone has to survive.
But don't give us a disingenuous acting.
I was fully bought in. I never watched this. I was fully bought in and I was emotionally sad. I was, oh no, they killed him. Oh no, she died.
Yeah.
And then, woo, it was all a dream.
How dare you? How dare you? It felt really cheap. It felt really rushed. The fact that, it didn't even make sense to make 2 Breaking Dawn movies because the first one is fucking throwaway.
Yeah, they could have wrapped that shit up in one movie, especially since if this was their ending. I felt like they did this just to give us that sort of, oh man, whew.
Like the first part of Breaking Dawn, it just felt like a Kristen Stewart, Robert Pattinson movie. And can I just say, those two don't look like they belong in a tropical climate. And this is coming from someone that is originated from a tropical climate. They look like they belong in a cold, wet place.
Mm-hmm. Well, he saw himself as a cold, wet person.
Yeah, he sure did. And there are other guest stars, but the only other person I care to mention is Wendell Pierce. Jay Jenks.
Mm-hmm.
Who saw that coming? Yeah, it was nice to see, and we did make a Wire reference earlier. But there you go, friends and lovers.
Yeah, I'm just sad about that ending, man. Like, I just hoped so much more. I was already bought into, everybody sacrificing themselves for this sort of greater good.
You were ready to go down in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, like you're fighting for the principles, and the Volturi have been sort of, they're not the greatest people.
But they take advantage. Yeah.
And the Russians aren't great either, but you fight for something you believe in.
Yeah.
And then to give us that scene and to have all those feels just squashed and wasted.
Yeah, it's not right.
It's just cheap.
Yeah.
And Alice deserved better.
I did not know that's where we were going, sir. Okay, well, that's fair. Well, thank you so much, friends and lovers. We take kindly to your kind around here. We are going to end in a segment we call For Your Reference. OT.
I think I will reference Vampire Diaries.
Surprise to nobody.
it's watchable, and in this day and age, mate, watchable is a pass.
I'm surprised you didn't reference True Blood because it's more mature, isn't it?
I would have, but man, it just I got sick of I got sick of Vampire Diaries as well at the end. But I feel like for Twilight and the sort of Twilight sort of mood, Vampire Diaries comes closer than True Blood. Because True Blood can get a bit too dark at times, so we don't want that. So stick to the
fair enough.
last show in Vampire Diaries.
I wanted to reference Sleepy Hollow because I don't know if Ichabod Crane is a vampire, but he looks like one. But based on the fact that we fucking stan Nicole Bahari, I'm not going to reference Sleepy Hollow because we fucking love her in solidarity. What I
just
will
watch
be
the first 2 seasons and then stop.
okay. That's a half reference for your troubles. But I will wholly reference American Gods. Yeah. It's unfortunate what's happening behind the scenes, but the first couple of seasons, if we're talking about fantastical lore, whether it's sacrilegious for me to call religion lore, come and fight me, but you should watch American Gods.
I thought we would have gone with Good Omens because of that guy of yours, Martin Sheen.
That guy of yours. I just keep him tucked behind the door.
Yep.
I feel like he would like that. I feel like he's a sub.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like
Giamatti level.
Yeah, just like OT Giamatti. Are we done with our carnal pleasures?
Yep.
Other places you can find our carnal pleasures are Twitter and Instagram. We are For Your Rough Pod.
You can write us an email at hello@fypodcast.com.
And we also have Apple Podcasts if you'd like to give us a rating and review.
See ya.
Bye.